This is David Taub with GV Wire. Here in the principal's office, or the head of school's office of Dr. James Bushman here at University High at the campus of Fresno State. Dr. Bushman, the charter renewal of University High is going to be up for vote at the Fresno Unified School Board this week. Did you think it would be this challenging for the renewal process?
I had hoped that it wouldn't be, but I only really do this every 5 years, and it is the time that the district and our school does need to talk about issues. So while I hoped it wouldn't be so, it's probably to be expected.
And what do you think the major challenges have been?
One of the real challenges for charter schools is that we're open for all students, but we don't get to really control who applies to our school. And that means that the demographics of who could apply may very well be different from a district or what a district has itself. And that creates really a problem because we want charter schools to be open to all students and attract students from every background, but that just doesn't always happen, and it brings up challenges that we always have to talk about.
Now, this past summer, the ACLU released a report to criticize University High over its admission practices. One of them was the algebra requirement, and you guys changed that. What did you do, and why did you do it?
We created the algebra requirement back in 2000 when our school was actually created. And at that time, the requirement was really necessary because too many students weren't really getting the math basics they would need to attend our school. Our school really was designed to be a college prep school, and the entry-level math course was Algebra 2. So it made really perfect sense to have Algebra 1 as a prerequisite, if you will, for students who wanted to come to the school. The idea, of course, is when kids come to a school, you want them to be ready to be successful. You want them to be prepared to do okay. And that's why we had that particular requirement. With the new Common Core requirements that have come out, however, we've changed our math sequencing. And because we found the requirement just was not necessary for us anymore. And the ACLU properly pointed out that it maybe wasn't a good thing to do anyway. And so it just so happened that it made it easy to eliminate that requirement.
Now, another area that seems to be part of contention is the music requirement. And we've talked with Fresno Unified, we talked with Superintendent Hansen, and he is not yet committal on the music requirement. Why is that such a vital component here at University High, and why is it so important to keep that requirement?
I think the real issue on the table is that we are a specialty school. We're a charter school designed to do really 3 things. We want to be an incredibly rigorous college prep school, and that's what we are. We also want to be a school that teaches music, 4 years of music theory, 4 years of music performance. That's really unlike anything you see in any of the schools that exist in this town. It's a specialty. And some kids will, of course, want to come to our school because they like that notion of learning music alongside of science and math and English. Other students will not. So we then, as a charter school, really did create prerequisites that we thought would put students in the best position to be successful in our school. Not really an unusual notion. In fact, most schools, most programs in this community have kind of prerequisites for kids who want to do things. And that's essentially what we did. But it is or can be problematic because while you create a requirement like we did, you don't want it to keep certain groups of kids from applying to the school. And that's really the crux of our issue with Fresno Unified. If you're going to have a requirement, is it still make your school open to all students? What's the middle ground there? And that's really the bone of contention.
And something that Trustee Cal Johnson brought up at the last hearing in October at the Fresno Unified Board meeting was the lack of diversity as he saw it. He pointed out there's only about 3% black kids here at Fresno Unified or University High, and he didn't appreciate it that much. So what can he do and what can be done to help satisfy his objections?
And that is the issue, of course. We don't have an attendance area. I don't get to bus students from one part of town to another to come to our school. We're really, we're dependent on who wants the program we offer and what kind of students they are. And in our case, only 39% of our students even come from Fresno Unified. Most come from outlying community areas. So it is a challenge for us because we're limited both in who gets to apply, we're limited in how we can recruit students. We're not really allowed to go into the neighborhood districts and go to their schools and send out flyers, so we can't do that. So we really have to look internally at what we can do. We can control our own communication to the community. We can control advertising. We can look at our website says. We can go to community outreach events. Those are the things we have to try to do to see if we can't get an applicant pool that's more reflective of what the community is.
Now, are those rules that apply to all charter schools or just University High when it comes to recruiting for the rest of the districts?
Actually, I've mentioned quite a few things, but let's just say the challenges University has are very, very common with all charter schools. If you look at the district's charter daily, it was set up to serve the local neighborhood clientele. That clientele has changed. Kepler is a brand new school that's only been around 3 years. Their demographics have changed. Frequently, we as a school, even when you're created to do something, sometimes you can't control who applies and what that does to your demographics. That's the challenges we all have.
Do you think Measure X has been one of the reasons that there's been kind of lukewarm support from the Fresno Unified administration, that the Charter Schools Association, a lobbying group for charter schools, has not supported Measure X? Do you think that's had anything to do with the challenges of renewal?
You know, I really don't know. I would like to think, of course, that when it comes to renewal and it comes to a school, that the board is really weighing the values of the school and what it offers the community and whether, of course, it's doing the things it's required to do. I can say that it is true that the statewide organization, as opposed to the facility bond I think you're referring to, that has nothing to do with us. We weren't asked about that. It's not something we preach. I know personally I love facility bonds and have voted for them continually because I recognize the value that good schools have on student performance. Students just do better when they like the schools they're in. And I know that usually bond money is well spent in a way that makes students happier about the schools they attend. And I think that's terrific.
Now, because your University High board president, Dr. Barry, thank you. He kind of implied that there was something going on that because of the Charter Schools Association's opposition to Measure X, that's causing the problems for University High. Do you agree with that?
You know, there's two things going on here that are really important for, I think, viewers to sort of understand. On the one hand, we have to look at our community and say what's in the best interest of our community. Our community is really, has typically been poor, and typically the facilities in our community are desperately in need of upkeep, maintenance, and building of new places. And when you look at what's happened with the previous bond measure at Hoover High School, at Fresno High School, at Bullard High School, at Sunnyside High School, a number of elementaries, you can see that money was spent really upgrading classroom facilities. I think Dr. Barry and myself recognize as educators that we need facilities for kids to thrive and do well in schools. But I think the Charter School Association also has a very good point in that they would say that quite a few students are served in charter schools. And so charter schools need money for facilities too. And in that sense, charter schools are limited in how they can raise money. And they then rely or hope that facility bonds will include money for charters. And that's something that they probably are after as well. Our school seems to be the battleground, or not our school, our community seems to be the battleground for this issue. On the statewide issue, the bigger point of can we get money for charter schools? But at a local issue, right here, right now, here's a school bond measure that will do great things for our community. And I think Dr. Barry recognizes, as I do, that despite the bigger picture, whatever that might be, or however you want to frame it, what's good for our community is to pass this particular bond.
And finally, Wednesday night, the board votes, and I guess the fate of University High School is in their hands. Now, at the hearing last month, 5 of the board members implicated either support or they liked the things that University High was doing. How do you feel about it, and just what is the procedure if somehow things don't go your way? I understand you can appeal to the County Board of Education.
Well, I'm very hopeful that things will all work out Wednesday. We've had a number of fruitful conversations with the district, and I expect everything to work out just fine. But the plan for all charters is that if your local authorizer does not renew you, then you appeal to the county office. They then become the next place you take your petition to. They review the petition, and they make a decision about whether they think you're the right place to be or not. And if that appeal doesn't work, one can appeal all the way to the state Board of Education, and they then can make that call in the end.
Now, is there a reason why Fresno Unified is the authority agency that grants you your charter? No, I'd say Clovis Unified or Central Unified.
Yeah, the way actually charter law works is schools are required to apply to the district in which they reside. So we were initially chartered with Sierra Unified, actually, not with Fresno Unified. And when we came up for renewal in 2006, the law had just been changed, and the new law required us to go to Fresno Unified because our school resides within the boundaries of this district. And that's where we've been, of course, since 2006. I'm very happy to be right here authorized with Fresno Unified. It's the reason we brought them our charter this year for renewal for the next 5 years.